I had it, time to go.
Hi, I'm Madame Pamita, and this is Madame Pamita's Parlor of Wonders. You can find me online at parlorofwonders.com. Today I'm going to be talking to you about one of my favorite roots to work with, Queen Elizabeth root. Queen Elizabeth root is otherwise known as Orris root, and it is a root from an iris plant. In its whole state, it looks like this, and we often use it in its whole state. But we can also use it as a powder or in cut and sifted form. Any way you use it, Queen Elizabeth root is a great one, and it's a great one for using for empowerment. Whether that empowerment is with love or in life, in career, with family, Queen Elizabeth root is fantastic. So I'm going to show you a few of the many ways that you can use Queen Elizabeth root to bring more empowerment into your life. First of all, a whole Queen Elizabeth root can be used to make a mojo bag. This is one of the most powerful ways to use this root. You can take a mojo bag, which is a small flannel bag. Very traditionally, it's a red flannel bag, but certainly you could use other colors if there were areas that you specifically wanted to work some color magic. But taking a red flannel bag certainly would work in really any area of life. You would take that Queen Elizabeth root and put it into your mojo bag. If you watch my video on making a mojo bag, you'll see the details of making a mojo bag. If you wanted to increase that power, you could add other herbs to this mojo bag. For example, if the Queen Elizabeth root was to empower you in love, you could add love herbs. Or if the Queen Elizabeth root was to empower you in a work situation, you could do some work or success herbs. In the case of just total empowerment in all areas of life, you could just carry this single root in this bag and be perfectly, powered to do that. But you could add some other things to even increase that power. One of the great empowerment herbs is Calamus Root. Calamus Root is great for having control and power over others. Another one that has that quality is Licorice. Licorice gives you empowerment, it gives you control. And then finally, you could add some Quassia if the issue was a love issue. You wanted to have more control in a love situation. Those could all be examples of things you could add to your mojo bag with your Queen Elizabeth root. When you use that Queen Elizabeth root and you do that mojo bag, you're going to bless that mojo bag, as I describe in the video on working with mojo bags, with an oil. In this case, you could use Queen Elizabeth root oil, dabbing it on 5 spots. 5 spots and 1 in the center, 4 on the outside and 1 in the center. And feeding that mojo bag once a week with Queen Elizabeth root oil. You could also use this oil to wear as a personal fragrance, a personal scent. Orris root has long had a tradition in cosmetics. It has a very light, slightly floral scent, and it's a very pretty smell. So a couple drops of that oil applied to yourself in an upward motion, said with a prayer or in words of intention for bringing in your own empowerment is a very, very solid practice for increasing your own empowerment. You could also use that whole root to create a pendulum. And a pendulum, I have another video that you can watch, which is about working with a pendulum and how to work with a pendulum. So if you're interested in doing that, you should watch that one. You can make a pendulum out of your Queen Elizabeth root by taking a piece of string. I use a red string that has power and passion behind it, tying 3 knots around the top of the Queen E root. As you tie those knots, you can say some words of intention. Guide me well, show me the truth, strengthen my intuition, and so on. Now you have that Queen Elizabeth root hanging on a string. You have a very powerful and personal pendulum that you can use to ask yes and no questions and get solid advice from your intuitive inner guidance. Another way, and the last way I'm going to show you how to work with Queen Elizabeth root, is to dress a candle with Queen Elizabeth root. To really make a candle for your own empowerment, you can get a tall taper candle, and you're going to burn this candle over 7 days. You're going to get some Queen Elizabeth root oil, put a few drops on your hand, apply that oil in an upward motion to this candle. If you like, you can inscribe the candle with an intention, again, writing in an upward motion. And then you're going to sprinkle some Queen Elizabeth root powder on that candle. It smells very nice. You can add, if you like, some glitter. In this case, because we're working with empowerment and you want to add a color to your candle to give it a little extra power, you could use an orange or a purple glitter to your candle to give it that extra energy of empowerment and self-empowerment. You can take this candle, melt the bottom of the candle, and then press it into a candle holder or onto a dish. In this case, I have a beeswax candle, which is soft enough that I can just press it and it will stay. But you can melt that with a match. Lastly, if I were doing this spell, I'd like to sprinkle some Queen Elizabeth root in its chopped and sifted form around the candle to give it just that extra boost of that empowerment. And a nice circle around your candle. When you're ready to do your spell, you light that candle, speaking your intention of your empowerment, speaking the intention of your own self-assurance, self-confidence, your courage, and so on. Light that candle, burn it and about 1/7 of the way down, more or less, and snuff it out. The next night, you're going to light it and burn it another 1/7 of the way down, more or less, and then snuff it out. And so on until the 7th day, you burn it completely. Now you've done a very strong and powerful spell over 7 days for your own empowerment, to put you in the position where you feel confidence, you feel courage, and you feel self-reliant. Thank you very much for being with me. My name is Madam Pamita. You can find me online at parlorofwonders.com.
Had its time to go to Madame Pamita's show. Come to where the high-toned people meet.